One of the most important things you can do on this earth is to let people know they are not alone. Shannon L. Alder. Bending Not Breaking, Season 3, Episode 7, The Runaway. Welcome back to another episode. Number 7, The Runaway.
I really hate that I just joined in on that. Like, I don't
join on in.
Why do I
be a part of the hijinks? Be a part of the scheme.
What?
Be a part of the plan. Have some fun.
What
Katara.
are you doing? Whoa! Line drawn.
Have some fun.
Connection made.
Yeah. See, that refers to a part that happens in this episode. So, like, I was being what one might say as, like,
You're calling me a fun killer.
a witty. It was not so much. It was really more for the bit. I think you're not a fun killer, but it played well when you were like, I don't want to be a part of this hijinks, and I hate that I joined you.
What is that word, hijinks? I've never heard that.
It's like a scheme. Max, I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
This is Ben.
And then now we got Max because
Max, what's a hijinks?
That was a quick introduction. What's a hijinks, Max?
So it's like when two people say the same thing at the exact same time and then want to greet it. They're like, hi, Jinx. You owe me a Coke.
Is that really what it is?
No. It's like a scheme or a plan or a plot.
But his makes more sense.
Something
it's
you
like
need
I
to
thought that was
foil.
just like so Jinx, you owe me a soda. So it's like like that's a hijinks.
What's the etymology of that word?
Jinx?
Yeah.
Max?
Yeah, of course.
Google that later.
It's a Pokemon. So I believe it started there.
For the first time ever.
Yeah.
That's where
the word came from.
All right. We've had quite a season with we've had 4 guests.
Great guests.
Yeah, some really great guests. So we're excited about that. And we're going to have some more hopefully later this season.
That's the goal.
We'll let y'all know. But you should also send in voicemails to things like
we're starting to get voicemails again.
at gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter, BNB_pod,
And
and
you can find us on Facebook now. We have a Facebook group for our Patreon members. And remember, if you cannot contribute financially, please email us. We want to make sure that there aren't any financial barriers to you being able to participate. And that being said, we want to at least start there so that we can at least garner some support, which is why we're doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's also our Facebook page, which has started to like really just get some
traction.
It's hit the ground running, if you will. And there's just a lot of traction. There's a lot of interactions. And so you can join us on
hit
Facebook.
The ground running.
Never heard
at
that song.
the speed of light. Point.
I don't get it.
It's Green Day. And you said words, and then I sang off of those words.
It's a great game to play with your friends, y'all.
Point.
Anytime somebody says the lyric to a song, if somebody joins back in by singing said song, you gain a point. It's like it's like whose line is it anyway. The points don't matter, but there's a lot of pride in winning.
I love winning.
Me too.
New Health loves winning. Toph in this episode.
That's so true.
Yes, but
yes.
let's recap this episode. Honestly, I think it's my turn to do a recap.
I don't know. Let's let it be your turn.
These are the things you would think I would take notes about, like, odd episodes. I do the recap, but I didn't. Actually, that's not true. I'm supposed to do the even numbers. On the recaps. I remember that specifically.
You're just saying that.
30 seconds to Ben to recap this episode, and away we go.
This is blasphemy. Okay, so
25 seconds.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so like here's what happens. There's what happens. I don't even remember what happens. Oh my god, this
20 seconds.
Fair. Okay, so Aang and the gang, they're lots of swindling for money because Toph can earthbend and cheat people, but she's only cheating cheaters.
10
and then
seconds.
Katara gets mad at them for cheating cheaters, and then they all fight. They make up, and then Katara's like, "Let's do a scam together."
5,
and then Combustion Man
4,
locks them up, tricks Aang,
3,
and then they all sneak away
2,
and get lucky away.
1. Yeah, you did well. Well done.
I wasted like 15 seconds.
You did. It's like you didn't even watch the episode to start with.
I forgot about. I literally just watched this episode.
What's our lens today?
Transparency.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
We should make that a little bit more transparent, I guess.
Oh. Max, what you're supposed to do like a bumper or sound effect or something, right, on the board?
Yeah, I'll do a little but in post.
All right, great.
Will you really?
No.
You'll just have to wait and see.
Max doesn't do post.
I do. Where do you think the intro music comes from?
That's all right. That's right.
Anyway,
Max has a
transparency. Yeah, so I mean, literally,
How dare
transparency
you?
is
Hold on,
like.
hold on, Ben. If you're gonna sing my praises most episodes and say, "Oh, we appreciate Max, thank you so much," and then not appreciate the actual things I do, it doesn't make you very credible, Sunshine. We need to do one through a lens of credibility. We may have already done it. I'm not usually listening to y'all.
Goodness gracious. We'll be more transparent about our appreciation for you in the future.
That's not what I'm asking for.
Yeah, you didn't listen to him.
Good gracious.
He was pretty clear.
He's targeting you, not me.
Yeah, but then you made the add-on point. Max,
I don't want you
correct.
to give me lip service of appreciation if you don't even know what you're appreciating.
I'm appreciating the work that you do on the dials live.
There's very little that I do on the dials live.
I appreciate what you do in post, Max.
That's why we balance out.
Fair enough, I guess.
So,
transparency is the condition of being transparent, which is
I love when people use the word we're talking about while in the definition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's it. It's the condition
when
of being
you're
transparent.
when you're being transparent, that's transparency.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately,
to be fair, that's how I think most organizations who say they're transparent actually look at it.
That's so fair.
We're being transparent because we're filled with transparency. Our windows are clear.
Oh my god! But that's what it is. Like having the property of literally, it's like being able to transmit light without scattering, so you can see through something. Like it is clear. And so, therefore, you can see through it.
So, really, what we're talking about and I think what you're hearing when people say, "I don't want to be transparent," it's I want to be clear. I want to make sure that I'm being not muddled, that my message is being clear.
Yeah.
How people do that is very different.
The second definition is a little bit probably more connotative for our conversation. So it's free from pretense or deceit. Right?
Right.
I mean, easily detected or seen through. It's readily understood. It's characterized by a visibility or accessibility of information, especially concerning like business practices. It's often talked about in businesses, like you mentioned, right? So that's Merriam-Webster for you. That kind of brings us to the episode, right?
The episode, The Runaway.
That's right.
Where does this fall for you in season 3? Where does this fall for you in the show as a whole?
Are you talking about like ranking it?
Yeah, just
Max, how do you feel about ranks?
I don't usually love ranking things.
So here's what I'll say. This is not the episode I don't like.
We're still waiting for that.
It's not. It hasn't happened yet. We will get there because it happens in this series. But people don't like The Great Divide. We've talked about that.
Yeah, we have.
People don't like, what's the other big one? I want to say it's from season 2.
A lot of people,
Swamp. People don't like the swamp.
That's true. A lot of people don't like the beach.
I love the swamp. We
talked about that.
We talked about that as well. But this is an episode where does it play a part in the major arc of the series?
I think that what we're seeing
it gives us character development.
There's character development. That's
it's
exactly
a little
what it
bit
is.
of exposition, but it doesn't necessarily move the plot forward.
So you're saying this is a filler episode?
No, I don't think that those exist.
So what's
I'm
your point?
just saying that it's not my favorite episode
because it's not driving the main narrative forward.
I don't know. I'll rumble with it as we talk more about it.
Yeah, you're not being very transparent.
Correct, because the reality is it's tough to be transparent when you really don't know what you want to say.
I think that's important.
Yes.
I think that comes up in this episode a lot, right?
Yes.
So tell me about a time when you saw transparency or a lack thereof. I'm interested in your thoughts.
In this episode?
Yes.
Oh, it is purposefully muddled every time they go on a hijinks. Every time that they pull a scheme. Every time that Aang, Toph, and Sokka go out to do something, it's to pull the wool over the eyes of the people that are watching, the audience, the people who are playing these games. And the reality is we know that the first person was cheating. We don't necessarily know that
the others were. Yeah.
So they're just running these carnival games. And so if they're carnival games, which most are set up for you to lose, that's how they make money.
Yep.
But you sign up to play them understanding that, like, you're probably going to lose because that's kind of the purpose and how they make money.
Yeah, it's kind of like the lottery.
The first person, correct. The first person was clearly cheating people, throwing down coins to be a hustler, or beans, or whatever, little pebbles.
It was earth of some sort.
It had to be earth, right? Another question that I'll have later this episode. Earth of some sort. Clearly cheating. Hustles them. Oh, you won. Play again for all of this extra stuff. Tries to take away all of the beans.
Yeah, hustling.
Earth. And gets cheated. Or, I mean, yeah, gets cheated. But, like, we as the audience are kind of like, yeah, we're fine with that.
Are we?
You tried to cheat them. We're gonna let them cheat you back. I think we're supposed to be. I don't know if we are.
I think it raises.
If you should be, but I think you're supposed to be.
I think it raises an interesting question for people, and I think oftentimes people who haven't grappled with this before, gut reaction is to like, well, yeah, cheat the cheater. They deserve it.
They were trying to take your money.
Exactly.
So you took theirs.
Well, and I think that just raises a probably a higher level moral question of, is that acceptable? Is that okay? Which is interesting because Katara goes straight to this. No, that's
this
wrong.
This is not okay.
And
she's not happy with it.
I think, to speak on what you were talking about earlier, is that she's not really able to articulate why. She herself doesn't have a clear picture of like why this is bad. And so she just says it's wrong and you shouldn't do it. Right? So like it's not okay. You need to stop this. But there wasn't any articulation about, like, do you see why
this is bad and getting them to that point.
And so there's no transparency there.
Because you can't be transparent if you don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. So ignorance is a form of cloudiness because it does not make anything transparent.
It's like the person who tries to go up and give a book report on a book they didn't read. And so they just like stumble and they're like, this book has pages.
Yeah.
This chapter started this way.
It's called this.
The author was this person. Yeah. Terrible book reports.
Yeah. Fake news.
Anyways. So yeah, you can't be clear if you don't know what you're talking about. So it's the responsibility of Katara to navigate that, to put it into words.
So can we break this down a little bit? Why?
I would love to.
What makes it wrong to cheat the cheater? Or right? What is the moral question there?
I think for me, is it outside of your value system? And if cheating is outside of your value system, then you shouldn't cheat. You can't control someone else's actions, but you can control yours. Which I think we've talked about that before, right? Using dehumanizing language, not in my value system. Someone might do it to me. I'm not going to do it back. Or I'm going to try really hard to not do it back.
So if you notice that someone's cheating, your argument would be, how do you hold this person accountable? Rather than cheating them, how do you hold them accountable instead?
Right, because that's a loaded question.
Sure.
Because there's different variations of the relationship that comes into play. There's different variations of who has the power in that situation. The ability that they have to retaliate to your claim of them cheating.
Yeah.
Right? So if we're playing a game and we're on the same level and there's no power difference.
Yep.
Me holding you accountable to that is probably a little bit easier. It takes practice. It takes knowing how to do that. But I think I can have the conversation of, hey, Ben, my expectation is that we play this game fairly. What I just observed was this. Can you help me understand what's going on? Right? You're more likely to respond well to that. Maybe.
As opposed to, you're a cheater!
Right. Correct. If I call you out on that, it's going to bring up a wall. It's going to make the situation unsafe. But if I say, hey, this is what I observed and this is my expectation. Can you help me understand what's going on? It shows that I'm not making an assumption. I'm not using my perception of what's going on to tell my first story. I'm actually asking you to understand.
Yeah.
I'm seeking to understand.
Yeah.
That works when there's not a power dynamic shift.
Yeah.
Or if there's not a major power dynamic shift. I would argue you can probably have that conversation with the supervisor if they're a trusting supervisor. You can have that conversation with someone that you're supervising or working with. But if there's a great dynamic shift, like
being on the run in the Fire Nation,
correct,
being in
versus
clothing
the Fire Nation
that's trying to, they are literally trying to avoid being caught by any sort of authority figure because...
Correct. Toph's not going to be able to call out the Fire Nation for acting poorly.
Yes.
Right? She can't do that. She can't hold them accountable by herself.
No.
So that's a little bit different. Could she call out the hustler? I don't know. I don't know if there might be a perceived non-power dynamic shift, but there could be a massive power dynamic shift. She's a child. He's an adult.
Yeah.
He is a member of the Fire Nation. They are not. There's a lot of risk that comes in with holding him accountable that way.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you get to cheat him? I don't know. I don't know if it does. I would say no.
Yeah,
I would say live into your value system.
That is my response as well. I do not think it's okay to cheat the cheater. While it is accomplishing something that, like, it's teaching the cheater a lesson, what does that do to your moral compass? Because I think every time that we allow ourselves to practice values, rather than to profess values and then not practice them in order to achieve a goal, we're still moving away from our moral compass, right? And so the goal is to always act in the way that we profess. And I think that what we're seeing right here is, children who haven't grappled with this yet.
Right.
And they don't have the language or the understanding. Their values are not transparent to themselves.
Kasaka and Aang are on board.
Yeah, totally.
They're in it.
Absolutely. Well, until, right, Katara calls them out on it, and Aang's like, I solemnly swear on my Avatar promise that this won't happen again. Right?
Yeah.
And then it keeps happening. And it's interesting because I think when we are unaware of our own moral compass and when we have not done the personal work to know where our values lie, we are unable to make decisions based on values. So we have to make those things a little bit more transparent. We have to become more aware.
You have to do the work to do that.
Yes.
There are resources out there.
Well, and we talk about this all the time. This is a running theme in this podcast of, like, we have to become more aware in order to do good.
Yes.
Education around how we react to things, our emotional literature, our racial literature.
If you know better,
right?
you do better.
Yes.
You have to know better.
Maya
you
Angelou,
have to
y'all.
go out and search for that.
Yes.
So what we're seeing here is unexperienced kids that haven't done the work yet. We know their value system is good, but feeling justified or like you're bringing justice to a situation by cheating the cheater, not one that we're saying is living into your value system.
What I'm saying is that's a childish response. I'm gonna be real. Like, that's me being blunt about it. But, like, cheating a cheater is frankly a childish response to seeing cheating. The upstander, I think, instead will, again, absent of a power dynamic struggle, will call that out and say, hey, this is what's happening and I can't condone this, and I'm going to warn people who are playing this game because it's not acceptable. Yeah. Right? But again, you're so right to lift up the power dynamics series there, because it completely drastically affects the response.
One of the other things I wrote down in this episode is you have a gang that is not being transparent with who they are. Right? They are not being clear with their identities right now. And that is a safety measure.
Yes.
It would be unsafe and unwise for them to reveal who they really are at this point. And so I'm not going to... That's where it's like, we've talked about how honesty is not necessarily a good or bad thing. Sometimes it is necessary to be dishonest. Sometimes it is necessary as a safety measure to keep your identity hidden. We wish that wasn't the case in the Fire Nation. We wish there was balance. But we have to understand that they're not being transparent in that moment. And I think that that's important.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious then, let's transition a little bit to thinking about this idea of cheating, and that Toph is using her bending as a way in a form of cheating.
Yes.
Because I feel like that's important to lift up, because the people that she is people she is cheating
are one, assuming she's not an earthbender.
One, yeah, exactly. So there's an assumption of ability, but it seems like all of these games in a way are ableist, right? He's not only is he taking advantage of Toph, but he's taking advantage of what appears to be a blind child.
Yes.
In a visual game, right? And she completely takes advantage of the fact that he doesn't realize that she can see. But I think that is a really important thing to note as well, that her privilege as a bender grants her the capacity to cheat non-benders in a way that they have no idea what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, they don't expect an earthbender to be in the Fire Nation. And two, earthbending is like probably foreign to these people because they probably haven't traveled outside the Fire Nation.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So
we realized that, especially in other episodes, the one just previous to this, that traveling outside of your nation is not something that happens very often. The Avatar seems to be one of the few people that gets to do it consistently.
You all right there?
Yeah. had a little burp. It was a weird moment. Excuse me.
You're excused.
I can fix it in post.
Yeah, but
He's
Max,
not,
if you
not
don't
gonna fix,
do
he's
it,
not going to
then-
fix it in post.
then you're okay.
Yeah, I didn't say I will.
He just said he could.
Okay.
Watch, I'll just say consistently now, so he has a clean consistently to just easily edit in and edit all of this out, and it will still be in there when this airs. Watch. Consistently.
Thank you.
Yep. But he's going to do nothing with, like, that. We're just going to hear that whole thread through this.
If we don't, I'll be really impressed. So, going back to my original posit.
He cares very little about whether or not you're impressed.
Going back to the original posit, like, what is your response to using bending privilege as a form of scamming people? Because Spider-Man comes to mind for me. With great power comes great responsibility, and I don't know that has just. I just don't know if that's been developed yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is to that, because I think for me it's a tough topic to talk about when it comes to privilege.
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely worth having the conversation, because Toph has grown up in the Earth Kingdom in safety with bending in a safe portion of the Earth Kingdom, and now she's in the Fire Nation bending. And I wonder if there is a almost dehumanization that is taking place in her mind of, these are Fire Nation people, so
Who cares?
who cares, right? And I think we've talked about it, that how many dissenters are in the Fire Nation, right?
Yes.
How many of those people do not uphold the ideals of Lord Ozai?
That came up in a Facebook conversation with Bending Not Breaking just recently.
And so is her view of the Fire Nation allowing her to skirt her own morals to feel justified in doing it? I think that it's wrong. I think the scamming is wrong. And so I think the bending to scam is also wrong.
Does it make it worse that she's using bending rather than if she weren't?
I would argue that you need to use your privilege for good.
I agree,
So
right?
she's not. So I would say it's worse.
Interesting.
No.
Yeah, I'm. If you are listening and you have a thought on this, clearly,
Which I'm sure you probably do.
yeah, like please feel free to send that in. We would, in fact, like please do, not just feel free, but like we want to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Absolutely. There is a moment when it came to transparency.
Excuse me, Transpario.
Transpario, because I was about to say Flamio.
Hotman, Flamio Hotman.
Well, he says Flamio Toph when she wins, which I was like, Toph does not seem like a Fire Nation name, and it's probably one you shouldn't call her. And so it seemed like I don't know if it was a lapse in Aang's judgment or if that was just, but it seemed weird to me that he would say Flamio Toph in a world where they're trying to be undiscovered.
Especially after having realized that Piandao knew exactly who Sokka was based off
And
of his
who
name.
Aang was, yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's. I didn't even think about that.
It happened off, and it was one of those things where it's kind of like, that seems like that's too transparent. That's what triggered the, you shouldn't be saying your name right now.
Interesting. That's a neat. I didn't think about that. That's really cool. I
So,
like that a lot.
The other big moment for me that I want to touch on is this understanding of being clear, being honest, without compassion is cruel. And I say that because of the moment where Toph lays into Katara. She is saying things and being very clear with what she's saying about the way that Katara engages with the group. And she's not necessarily wrong. But there is a whole lack of compassion there in that moment. And I think that was cruel.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the people that we love the most are the ones that we have the greatest capacity to hurt. Because...
Yes, absolutely.
Because of that relationship.
Because of how close you are, you've likely been more vulnerable with that person.
Precisely.
You know the buttons.
You know the
push.
triggers, right? And that's why there's a lot of research on sibling dynamics out there. And a study I read up on was really neat because it's sibling relationships are relationships that there isn't anything else like it. And siblings have the greatest capacity to know exactly what hurts because you grow up seeing people looking in the mirror and having acne and then crying over it and then coming home from a bad date and you just know exactly what hurts and exactly what buttons to push to ruin someone's day. And when we get hurt, we are more likely to hurt people that are near us, right?
I want to expand upon that a little bit. Of just this understanding of how trauma, how pain manifests itself to come through and transfer itself from each participant that's receiving it. The data shows, if you've been abused, you are more likely to abuse. If you've gone through
Which
trauma...
is counterintuitive.
Correct.
Right?
But it's because that's what... I wonder, again, this is just based off of my limited knowledge, is that just because that's what you're learning? That's the behavior that you are learning from people that you are supposed to be looking up to as how to navigate situations, how to deal with struggles is this way. And so are we more likely to hurt people when they hurt us? Is it to grab power back? Is it because that's how we know how to respond? Because that's what we're seeing and learning and experiencing? But the data shows that happens on almost every level of trauma and pain. And so I think that's important to highlight, not just in these moments of when someone says something mean to me, I'm likely to do it back, but that's a trend between all behaviors.
Well, and just to continue the thought, when people are taking advantage of that vulnerability between close relationships, if you do that too much, you lose the relationship.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about this before, but I don't necessarily believe in the idea of unconditional love.
Which people get heated over.
Right? Well, but blood. People are blood. I can't. They're my family. There's nothing I can do about it. And I disagree. You have ample things that you can do. The problem is we don't we are so struck by this cultural narrative that family is the end all be all. And I just think that's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
I think the definition of family can change drastically.
Yeah,
I love the idea that family, you be there for your family, be there for people, right? But be there for your family. But you get to kind of choose your family.
Yes, absolutely.
Create a family that's loving and supporting, and choose those people to be a part of. And so maybe family is not the word that you use for it, but
well, and I think what that is, and I think what that is we are so attached to this concept. And this is, again, I'm not an expert, but I think we are so attached to this idea of unconditional love because we feel like we're in scarcity. We feel like love is not abundant, and therefore it is a limited thing, and we have to take it where we can get it. And if this is all, we accept the love we think we deserve.
It's not
right?
pie.
It's not pizza. It's not pie. It's not something where you take the pieces and then it's gone. It is there to be cultivated between individuals and between relationships.
And the more you give, the more you have.
Yes.
So give more.
Yes.
And do that by listening to people who are in pain. And do that by talking to your friends.
Yes.
And do that by building relationships.
Yes. And you know what? That happens in this episode.
I want more of it.
I do. I want more.
The moment where Toph gives all of that talk about how she really feels about Katara, and then immediately turns to Sokka and says, "You better not tell her any of this."
But
I'm like, "You tell her. You tell her, Toph. Tell her that.
Yes. Like, and again, I love Perks of Being a Wildflower. We've referenced this before, but Emma Watson's character, Sam, like at the end delivers this message of like, you can't hold love inside. You have to do something. You have to hold my hand. You have to ask me out. You have to dance with me. You have
It's
to
an action.
It's an action.
You have to tell people that they matter.
Yes. Y'all, let's just pause.
You have to tell people that they're not alone.
This is the end of the episode. This is the only message we're going to deliver. It's love people. Tell people that you love them. Go right now. Pause the episode. We'll wait for you, and go tell somebody that you love them.
But really, that's one like.
Be transparent.
It is such an important thing.
Don't hide it
do.
behind a cloud.
I love those moments of, hey, write a letter to someone that you need to tell that you love them and give it to them. Like, write a thank you note. Because I don't often give myself permission to do those things, but the moment that I do, one, it means so much to them when you let them know that they mean something to you.
And it's good for us.
And how much of this conversation would have changed if there wasn't a fear of, does Katara feel like she needs to prove herself as fun and loving and caring by doing this scheme that almost gets them killed?
It does.
And had they just been transparent with each other about how much they actually care about each other, would that have been completely unnecessary?
Yeah. There's what's the statistic? It's something around, I'm making this up, but it's really close to this. Something along the lines of like 90% of our body language is communicated not through speaking, but through our body.
Correct.
Right? I said body language. Our communication
I agree with that made up stat.
But I'm pretty sure that's close to what it is. But
Max, Google it.
But
I need you to be our researcher too.
This is where I'll put in like a typing sound effect.
Cool. Yeah.
In post.
Moral of the story is body language is a major factor of communication, but not only body language. I think our actions speak louder.
93%.
I was close.
Yeah.
So where's that statistic from?
Google.
Okay. Good talk with all the fake news in the world. Anyway, moral of the story is I'm pretty sure I've read a credible article that says it's really high. So with that in mind, it's important to realize that not just our body language, but our actions and what we say and do make a big impact in communication as well.
It looks like... there's so many ads that pop up when you go on websites.
Always a good sign when you're doing a research.
Yeah, that's not what you want.
So, again...
it's the breakdown looks to be 7% is based off of your words. That is correct. However, tone of voice, volume, rate of speech, vocal pitch, facial expressions, hand gestures, posture, all that stuff creates the other 93%. So, like, tone of voice and how you say the words is equally important.
So, what I'm arguing is that in addition to all of that and those statistics is that behavior is communication. Behavior is a form of communication. And the problem is behavior isn't often transparent.
Max, add some snapping sound effects. Yes.
But behavior is just, it's not transparent, right? And what happens is, how do we begin to observe behavior as a form of communication? Because right now, what's happening is they are reacting to one another rather than looking beneath the surface a little bit and looking like going around the clouded veil and looking to see what the clearer picture behind it, right? And Katara starts to do this. Toph at one point was like, I left. They're arguing about why Toph left, and then Katara starts to like make a connection in her mind that says, "Oh, this is about your parents." Oh, and you see Toph starting to get defensive, and later on you say, "No, you were right. This is what I was mad about." But in the moment, she's not willing to admit that.
Yeah, we bow up.
And the problem is, there's two aspects to this. We are neurobiologically wired to get dopamine and like all the good endorphins when we connect stories in our brain, even if they aren't true. So if we come to a conclusion and we make connections in our brain where we're able to tell a full narrative, our brain rewards us. So we're like, why did this happen? And then we get to like, oh, Toph did this because of her mom. Our brain rewards us. Even...
Haha, you smarty pants. Give yourself some dopamine.
Exactly. Even if our narrative is wrong, which I think is also dangerous, right? Because it contributes to the idea of perception being reality. And we talked about this last episode, but perception as a reality is dangerous. And this is really interesting because what happens is this story happens. We tell ourselves that story. We assume what's going on. We make that connection. Our brain rewards us. And then we start to make implicit calls, and our biases play into those stories. In this case, she was right. Katara was right? Mm-hmm. She was able to use that inference and her, what's the word? Inductive skills to...
Deductive reasoning?
Yes, to come up with this theory that happened to be right, and Toph admits it, but behavior is not often this transparent. And it wasn't to me because Katara had to illuminate it. So tell me about how do you react to all of that?
So part of it, you see people kind of go into that fight or flight, right? And so I think you see a lot of the fight. And I think you see that now. When people think it's an attack on character, you see them fight. You see them get defensive. And so I think part of it is, how do we give feedback? How do we make those connections? How do we hold people accountable to our expectations, making sure our expectations are clear, but doing it in a way that is not an attack on moral character, but an attack on the behaviors. That being said, it might be moral character.
Yeah.
But if we're doing our best of assuming the best that we can and giving the most generous assumption, we need to be attacking the behaviors and bringing people to that.
So that's my theory, is that in order to combat a lack of transparency, we need to bring the hypothesis of generosity back into play.
Yes.
Right?
That's how you make the best story. That's how you make the best first draft.
Yeah, it's exactly, right? And that's like our first draft is right, wrong, whatever.
That person's a jerk for cutting me off on traffic.
Yeah.
Versus how much more empathetic we are if maybe they're on their way to the hospital.
Yes.
And how immediately that takes you from level 10 anger to level 6 anger. You might not be happy that they cut you off.
Well, and we see them yelling and screaming at each other throughout this episode, and we realize that this is just like they're lost in translation because everything that they're communicating is clouded behind, one, their inability to articulate their ideas and thoughts, which is clouding the transparency and making it not transparent, but also what we were just talking about, right? That there's a lack of hypothesis of generosity. There's a lack of benefit of the doubt, right?
Yes.
It's tough. There's a lot there.
Yep. And I'm going to bring up even more.
Oh, good.
I'll start with one that is not important.
There's a lot of unimportant ones in here. Laughable
Shouldn't
ones.
Toph be able to bend wood?
Actually, I wrote this down. Instead of writing that, though, I wrote, isn't there earth underneath the wood? Or around it? Or near it?
Right. Because you couldn't have... We've seen you... you even mentioned before, you could bend earth to act as a wedge.
Yeah.
To, break something open. But wood is earth. So,
Is it?
I guess we see Hugh bend water in the vines. But I would argue that earth is wood, or wood is earth.
I would not. I don't think I buy into that one.
Because it comes from the earth.
Yeah, I think it comes from the earth. I don't think it is earth.
Interesting. Maybe they can't bend wood.
I don't think so.
But I think you should. That's where I stand right now. You should be able to bend
I bet
wood.
our listeners will disagree. That's where I'm
Now that I think about it more, it makes sense that you can't, but I'm still... This is a hill I am willing to at least fight on, not die on. I said fight on.
Oh,
not willing. I am willing to stop fighting on this hill and pleasantly walk off. Now,
the other one?
The other one, which was important, is no longer in my head. I should have started with the first one.
You know what a funny one I think is that I wrote down?
Oh, no, got it. Okay.
Oh, darn it. Mine was funny. Hold on. Mine's first. So
I'm gonna forget again.
A loud sneak attack is a bit too transparent.
Yes. Sokka should not be that transparent.
That's what I'm saying. All right, what's yours?
I think that there's two moments that get played as a joke, and I think it's important to highlight.
Okay.
Sokka comes back and shows Toph her wanted sign and says, "Look at this."
Oh, it does happen twice.
And
yes.
she goes, "It sounds like paper, but I'm assuming you are talking about what is on the paper, which I cannot see."
Yes.
Katara does it. And Toph says, "What is wrong with y'all? I am blind. Why do you keep doing this?" And I think that that's actually pretty important. And it gets played for humor, but I think it's important. If you hear or obtain knowledge or learn something and you forget or make a mistake one time, 2 times, it's fine as long as you are genuinely trying to fix that mistake. But if you keep making that mistake over and over again, it is not okay.
You know what this reminds me of?
Please tell me.
Gender pronouns.
Yes.
I mean, right?
Yes.
Like, if someone tells us that they prefer to be identified using male or female or non-binary pronouns, and we don't, that's an issue of, it's disrespectful, right?
It is disrespectful.
It's an act. It's an act of, like, it's violent in a way. It's a form of abuse in a way.
I attribute it to Black Lives Matter.
Well,
if you are being told that someone is in pain over and over again, and you are seeing it over and over again, and you're hearing stories from 2016 that act and sound like they could be played today, or you hear stories of 2010 and act like and sound like they could be played today, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. No, yes.
And so I think that point gets played as a joke, and it's funny. It makes us laugh. And it's not okay.
You know what we haven't really done yet? Y'all, this is, we have very much laid out our opinion on Black Lives Matter. We have, like, it's Pride Month. We're recording this during Pride Month.
Correct.
This will not air during Pride Month.
Correct.
But y'all, we have made it clear, I think, but we want to be explicit. Like, it's important for us to make sure that everybody feels like they are a part of the human, like that everyone is human existence, that no one is dehumanized, and everyone who is in the LGBTQIA, all of the letters, whichever acronym you prefer, like, we believe in human dignity, and we believe everyone is a part of that human dignity.
So when someone tells you they don't feel that way, don't ignore it.
Yes.
And I think you see that in this moment. I am blind. That is not something that I can do. She gets mad at it the second time. Stop doing it. And so I think that's important to lift up.
So can I be potentially problematic?
Yeah.
About that moment?
Yeah.
So the first time, I think she genuinely doesn't know what's on the page.
She doesn't.
I think the second time she does.
Right.
How does that play into this conversation? That like, does that make sense as a question? Like, I think that, how does it play that, like, is she perpetuating that narrative by playing into that question that way? Tell me about that.
I think she knows, and she knows what she's doing is wrong at this point, or she hasn't figured it out yet. But in that moment, I don't think that still changes the delivery method, right? Like, all lives matter. I get what you're trying to say, but now it's hurtful. So, like, I still understand you. I still understand what you mean, but I'm also telling you that the way that you did it is hurtful.
Yes.
And so I think that it doesn't negate the behavior.
Well, I agree, and I think that's the important part, because I think a lot of times white people get mad at people of color, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, etc., when we feel as though, like, oh, but you're being racist, but those two things do not cancel each other out, right? 2 bad deeds does not make 1 bad deed okay, right? And so just the fact that BIPOC, anyone can be racist, right? But just because someone else is being racist doesn't make it so that you can be racist, right? We have to be actively anti-racist, right? Like, does that make sense? Am I drawing? Does that conclusion make sense?
I disagree with the concept.
Okay, tell me.
I think anyone can be prejudiced. I think you can show prejudice towards anyone for their traits and the person that they are.
Okay.
I think when it is racism, it is strictly engaged in the powers at be that are creating a system of racism.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
So it is tough if a person of color is prejudiced towards you, they are still not uplifting the system that is racist, that is taking them down.
I hear that, but I also
not racism.
So I hear that. I think I'm referencing Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be Anti-Racist when I say this. his definition of racism is anyone through action or inaction is perpetuating a racial system. And I think anyone can do that.
Fair.
And anti-racist is actually actively working against it. And so I think I'm playing into that definition. Does that make sense?
Yes, I was using Beverly Tatum's definition, but yes.
And that lifts up two really important things, right? And the fact that we are able to have this conversation and work through this together and work through this in a way where the people who are listening to this can also hear that we don't know. We're working to find out.
That's the reality is we don't know, and we're going to continue to work to learn and do the best that we can. We're going to mess up. I might have just messed up.
And I might have just messed up.
And we're going to keep working.
And we're going to keep working. Because things, frankly, are not as transparent as they should be.
Correct.
And we have to work to make things a little bit more transparent.
If this seems like it's been a heated episode, it has been. I think that's important. I think there's processing happening, and I think that conversation is important.
Absolutely.
So, any other thing else in this episode that we need to talk about before we kind of move on to a practice and to our gratitude?
Let me check my notes. We really didn't talk about Combustion Man, but I think the only thing that I'm like...
Sparky Boom Man.
Yeah. I think I was confused at first at how did the guard know, like, oh, this is who you were looking for? He doesn't ever speak. And so does he write things down? Is he...
we never hear him speak.
Correct. But we also never hear Please speak in Legend of Korra. It makes it really seem like speaking is something that is not what people with this ability do. And so you might be right. Maybe they do, but we never see it happen. I think he writes. That's my theory.
Sure.
I think he's an eloquent writer.
Maybe he's a beautiful writer.
Right? Maybe he's a poet.
A murderous poet.
Yeah. Maybe that's how he...
What's the most generous assumption you got for Combustion Man?
A poet.
A lot of pain.
Yeah, and he has to express it, and especially he has to translate the things that he does into creativity, and that's how he does it through poetry.
All right. Well, anything else? We'll take a quick break, and then we will come right back with our practice and our gratitude and our devotion.
Yeah, before we go, I just want to thank our wonderful Patreon participant that gave us this lens. Thank you so much for giving us this awesome chance to have this conversation. It was very fulfilling and lots of challenging conversation that I think was really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for indulging our short break. We are coming back to talk about a quick practice to become a little bit more purposeful about our watching of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and then we're going to have our devotion, and then we're going to have a nice little moment of gratitude.
Gratitude! I love it.
Yeah, it's more than just an attitude, it's an action, right?
Oh, that was a little fun.
Yeah.
That was fun.
So we're changing it up this time. We're going into a Lectio. And so, again, this is traditionally a Christian practice, but we are adapting it to a very non-secular, or a very secular practice in terms of what can we learn from a random line in the show.
Yeah.
Right? And so just a reminder, that's a 4-step practice, and we'll go through and teach those as we go.
Great.
So the line that randomly picked up on the Avatar transcript of this episode, as I scrolled and then randomly stopped, I landed on this episode, or this, oh my God, I lost it. This line. Okay, here it is. You act like you hate them, but you don't.
What is literally happening?
Yeah, you act like you hate them, but you don't.
This is Katara talking to Toph about her parents.
That is, boom. So step 1 is what is literally happening. So, Katara and Toph are arguing about why Toph is scamming the group, and Katara is uncomfortable about it, and she's just laying into her, and then it turns into this conversation about her parents, and she says, you act like you hate them, but you don't. You nailed it. Step 1, done.
I'm so good at Lectio Divina.
No big deal or anything. So step 2 is allegory, and so what does this line remind us of in the rest of the series? what does this remind us of in other media as well? So we can pull in from like Harry Potter, Legend of Korra, Lord of the Rings, any movies that you like. Just like, what does this line remind you of allegorically?
It makes me think of guilty pleasures, which I don't necessarily believe as of like guilty pleasures.
Tell me more about that.
You're pretending to not like a song that you like because you're afraid of what other people might think of you for liking that song.
But in private, you love it and you watch it.
So I'm a big fan of like, if you love the song, just love the song.
Yeah.
Right? If you like it, just like it. But I understand that that's not always.
Yeah, I would say my guilty pleasure is like Survivor. But also
nothing guilty about that.
I don't necessarily feel guilty, but if I were to describe it to somebody that I don't know very well, I'd be like, yeah, I kind of have a guilty pleasure of liking Survivor.
Yeah, I felt that way about Legally Blonde for the longest time.
Yeah, Legally Blonde is great.
Yeah, there's nothing guilty about that. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's so good.
Love Elle Woods. Love Elle Woods.
The musical's even better.
I love the musical.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it made me think of, is just people having a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, and so just a reminder of the line, you act like you hate them, but you don't.
Right.
So that's interesting. So guilty pleasures of like acting like
and I think that sometimes we use guilty pleasures as a way to fit in.
Yeah.
Like that's I think where
that's
it's
a great
the issue
point.
is that like we use guilty pleasures or this the word I'm trying to think of, this mutual hatred. So we can connect with people, but it's not a real connection, right?
Oh, common enemy intimacy.
Thank you. Yes, common enemy intimacy. This thing of you hate them, so I'm going to hate them too.
Yeah.
So that I can fit in with you. And the reality is like that doesn't create a real connection.
Well, that really makes me feel that's so interesting because like Toph, this is so not a real connection. This argument that they're living in right now is them being disconnected. Right? And then you lift this up and it's like you act like you hate them, but you don't. If you just said, like, if you just were living in this real moment and you got vulnerable with me, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It would be hard. It would be a tough conversation, but it would be very different.
Yeah, but you also have to Qatar didn't set a good container for
that. Oh, that's not a safe container at all. But like it's but like that's what I'm saying.
It's tough to be vulnerable when someone's screaming at you in that way or hitting you with a waterfall or whatever.
100% not blaming Toph at all.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something to consider. Like when there is that lack of transparency, if you will.
Yes.
I wonder if leaning into that vulnerability and not leaning on common enemy intimacy could help us. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to step 3.
Let's do it.
So step 3 is, what does this remind us of in our own lives? So not just
I really
allegory
kinda
from
missed it.
fiction, but like now, like about our own lives. How does this play into the things that
kind of jumped
are
to step
happening?
3, not step 2. Yeah, I keep the same answer for step 3.
Yeah,
because I gave that for step 2 on accident.
Yeah, so that happened. Thinking about
now, I got to think of something allegorically, or it's gonna bother me.
Let's do allegorical. Let's go there.
Yeah, because I cheated.
Yeah, that's okay. It's not perfect. We're not perfect.
Progress, not perfection.
That's right. So yeah, allegorically, what comes up? So like, what other areas of fiction or TV shows, or I mean, we talked a little bit about like Legally Blonde, but that was under the context of a guilty pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. Can you think of other characters that would say something along these lines? You act like you don't hate them, or you act like you hate them, but you don't.
Oh, it does make me think of Mean Girls.
Tell me more.
The way that Katie Heron treats her friends.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, in order to fit
the way
in,
that she
right?
treats the
Again,
plastics,
it's fitting in
right?
the same thing, trying to fit in.
Yeah, so it comes to mind where it's like, you act like you hate them, but you're actually one of them. Is kind of where...
yeah, that's a great
Max, what's her
allegory.
name? Why can't I think of her?
Regina George.
No.
What?
Katie's friend.
Janice.
Janice Ian.
Janice
Ian, thank you. Yeah, that makes me think of Janice Ian. There's my allegorical connection. I am doing well.
Nailed it. Yeah, well, and I think it's a great one.
2.5 out of 3.
Yeah,
That's what I'm sitting. That's my grade.
Yeah. So anyway, step 4 is, what are we feeling called to do based off of this? Like, what is this line in this conversation inspiring us to do? Like, what is the action that this is calling us to take?
it's to me, it's still to give the most generous assumption that you can give, right? And so, and that's referring to you act like you hate them, but you don't. Why do we hate people, and what is the connection, and what is the most generous assumption that we can give, and how do we work from there?
For me, it's less about the generous assumption and more about don't pretend like I hate people. Like, I need to start thinking about when I feel pressured to not like somebody, because those are the moments where that needs to be a sign for me that I am acting out of my values in order to try and fit in rather than just be me and belong. Right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I want to do, is I want to take note of what I don't like and then like question it. Do I really not like this, or am I saying this in order to be a part of something that I'm not? Right?
Are you living outside of your value system?
Am I living outside of my values?
No.
Yeah. Well, that's our Lectio, y'all. We may have done it imperfectly, but I think it was a good conversation still.
Absolutely. Again, progress, not perfection.
And you can do this on your own.
With anything.
Right?
So let's jump into our devotion because we're running short on time.
All right.
The element is water. Looking at transparency.
Water.
What do you want to do this week?
Water. I think about water being transparent when it is most transparent, I think, when it is in its liquid state. Because when it's in a steam form, it's kind of hard to see through the steam. When it's in gas, you can see through it. But but
when it's a solid, when it's ice,
it's
very difficult to see.
It can be very difficult to see through it, depending on if it's contaminated or not. And so I think about what can I do to become more transparent in terms of my water? How can I make sure that the things that are swirling around within me, right? The dust particles, the dirt, the detritus that has been up and down the river, that it, you know what I'm talking about? So I think about a clear stream that is really just beautifully clear, or the ocean that is just really beautifully clear. And then I think about this mud puddle that is just gross and hard to see through. And I think about why, and I think about what purifies that. So for me, I want to think about what are the filters that help me become more transparent rather than the filters that block my transparency. Because I constantly operate with a filter. And oftentimes I've been called an enigma, or people don't understand me, or I hide my emotions. And I think I really need to start questioning my filters, because that's not my goal. My goal isn't to be an enigma or to be... I want to be transparent, and I want to be real, and I want to be authentic. And I think I just need to reflect on my filters and think about what are the filters that will help me be me more, right?
Yeah. Mine's going to be a little bit more simple and a little bit more tangible.
That's probably better.
I'm gonna take a note out of Toph's book. I'm going to write a letter to someone that I care about and tell them that I'm going to do that.
I love that Toph did that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so beautiful.
That's my weekly goal this week, to share some gratitude, to share some caring, to put a little love into this world so that there's a little bit more love there.
And that's our challenge to our listeners too. I think that's it's possible and tangible, and frankly, it's easy to write something down. And it may not be easy to give it to the person, but take some time. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be a heart
3x5 card.
Yeah, that small action makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. And to go into the gratitude, Toph is my gratitude for the same reason. I love that she was able to do that by the end of it. I love that she was able to admit that she was wrong, and to keep learning. And I strive to do that and struggle with that every day. And so I think for me, I want to lift her up for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So Toph, that's mine.
That's awesome. So for me, I am so grateful for Aang. And Aang in this episode makes mistakes. He makes promises he doesn't keep. He says things that aren't true, and he learns and grows, and he isn't necessarily called out for this. It's more all of the targeting from Katara comes for Toph, but I think Aang sees this, and through Katara's actions is able to grow, even though it's not directed at him. And I think that's beautiful. I think that being able to grow and develop and learn, even when it's not you on the line, is something that we all need to do more of. Is see the things that are going on around us and learn. And I think Aang is a beautiful example of that.
Absolutely.
So I'm really grateful for it.
Let's learn.
Yeah, y'all. Let's learn.
I've been learning for 30 years. Got some stuff to unlearn. Got some more stuff to learn.
Yeah.
But I got to keep learning.
Unlearning is just as important as learning.
But learn. All right, y'all.
All right. That's it.
Filled episode.
If you liked it, support us on Patreon. We'd love that.
I got more out of this episode by talking about it. So thank you for that, Ben.
Yeah. Thank you, Sunshine.
Max, thank you for all the work that you do here and in post.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear all those sound effects that we talked about. Mm-hmm. So, and if y'all have anything that you'd like to add, BNB_pod for Twitter and Instagram.
Bending Not Breaking on Facebook.
And I am Sunshine Mayfield.
This has been Pruitt.
And this has been Bending Not Breaking.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening.